Guess we're on mic. Hi. I'm going to record this because I actually have interest in whatever he has to say as well. Thanks for showing up.
Great to be here.
The past year has been pretty eventful for you in financial terms, investment terms. You've vaulted into the leagues of the unicorn, some of the handful of European unicorns, and then you've taken another step recently. Just talk about how things have changed for you since then.
In December last year, we announced a big funding round, which was led by GA for 250 million, which brought us at the time at the 1.2 billion euros valuation. Oddly enough, the attraction that we were not so known at the time, because Adyen is a payments company that serves particularly the large global companies. So from a consumer point of view, we are not so known. To my surprise, when we recently announced that we did another round with Iconic, which is the family office of a few people from the Valley, like Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerberg, everybody was all over us. They thought that was amazing, whereas I thought it was pretty amazing that we raised 250 million with GA.
You've been around for a while. Do you still consider yourself a startup, or how do you compare yourself to all the other unicorns that are getting the money these days?
Yeah, it's almost two questions, because it's the unicorn thing and it's the startup thing. We are obviously a startup. We are a startup because we're well above 100% growth per year. We are a startup in terms of the people we attract, in terms of the atmosphere, because this is the phase that we can get a lot of things done, where we're expanding rapidly, where it's the customer that sets the requirements, and where the company as an IT company is able to deliver on it, so where there's a huge speed. So yes, that's a startup. Of course, in terms of we're profitable, about 45 million this year. We have significant revenues, over 300 million. So in size, you're getting somewhere, but if you think about a startup and you walk into our offices, you say, yes, this is a startup. The unicorn thing, I always find it an uncomfortable term, because unicorn, the whole leaderboard of unicorns, has led to people taking money at unfavorable terms, but to maximize on the valuation of the company. And for us, it has been the other way around. It happened to us. We were raising money with companies that we felt could help us to quickly roll out, so help us in speed. And we weren't looking so much on the unicorn leaderboard. So when people talk about unicorn and call you a unicorn, it's something that happened to us. And I would find it very potentially damaging for companies if you take funding at silly terms, just to be very high on that list. Because that list is just a list. In the end of the day, it's about your success and your speed of rollout. If you make your life difficult being high on a leaderboard,
Truly,
it doesn't make sense.
You've been busy in FinTech since before many people knew the term. In fact, do you know who invented the term? I've looked it up and haven't found yet.
The first time I heard the term is from advisors in Silicon Valley. I think in Menlo Park, when one of the financial advisors said, yeah, we have a special division for FinTech, and you're right in our sweet spot.
If anybody in the audience knows the origins of the term, please tell me afterwards. I'm quite interested. We know the origin of a lot of the trendy terms these days, but I haven't been able to figure it out with FinTech. You've been active for years. I guess you should tell a little bit of the story of how you first got into the payments business and how you came back again as Adyen.
What we did is, I used to work for a payments company what we were is a layer over the banks, making it easy to integrate payments, because for many companies, working with a bank is a very difficult way to get your payments sorted. After we exited that company, we had this incredible opportunity, because suddenly we had a name, as right now we were doing something the second time around, so we had access to capital. We had knew which developers worked really well for us, and that allowed us to start a company with a clean sheet, but having all the experience in payments, saying like, look, this second time around, we're going to build the company of our dreams. And the company of our dreams is no longer patching up old rail in financial infrastructure, but building everything ourselves, from Visa to the merchant MasterCard or all the alternative methods. No longer patchworks, but doing everything in one platform, doing it online, point of sale and mobile. I must say it sounds much better now, because some of it was a winding road, but that's what the strategy turned out to be, and that's what was delivered. And we couldn't have done that without first having a company and having had the opportunity, or that's the way how it panned out. But we sold that company and we felt we weren't done yet, so then being able to do it the way it really should be done.
And you sold that company, and you sold it to RBS.
Yes, we did.
So maybe you can connect the dots for the audience who don't know the story.
So we sold it to RBS, the Royal Bank of Scotland. In the financial crisis, they were forced to sell it, so they sold it to Adyen Bain. It got rebranded to WorldPay. Our former company was called Bibit. The joke in the market always was, it was a fusion, a merger between a company which was called WorldPay and a company which was named Bibit. The joke was Bibit gave it the systems, WorldPay gave it a name. So pretty much our platform. That has been merged with some other business and has been bought public for about over £7 billion fairly recently.
Right. So do you see yourself as a disruptor of the banks? Are you trying to become a new bank? Or just what's the long-term game for the industry and your place in it?
Disrupting in itself is uncool. I think everybody should have a happy life. I don't want to disrupt anything. What we want to do is there are merchants which have a need, and in many cases the banks have not delivered on it, or it has been very difficult because they were nationally organized. And if you take a company like a Facebook or Spotify, they're globally organized. So that's a mismatch. And we are an interface, but we are also all the way into the network. So we try to get them to the point that one contract with us just solves their payment issues. And by doing that, of course, there are current suppliers who are being disrupted. There are current people who have a job which is being, through better technology, is not necessary anymore. So by doing that, you're disruptive, but being disruptive is a side effect, and I don't think it's particularly cool to upset something. I think it's particularly cool to be a company that can really help other companies. So it comes from a total different motivation. It's not that I come home and think like, oh wow, we disrupted so much today. It's like, no, oh wow, we helped those companies so well today. And unfortunately, yes, if someone wins, somebody else is going to lose.
Got it. So who are your allies in this game?
Typically, it's the international company which has a lot of problems with how things are currently organized. And the larger company is very focused on service level to their shoppers. They want to tell the shopper that they can pay and make it easy. They are very worried about saying no to valid shoppers because it's a very frustrating experience and harmful for their brand name. And because we have everything done ourselves, we are the most exact in telling that, so it leads to a higher conversion, and that's really what the game is about in the high end of the market. So those are our partners. The international companies, very focused on quality of service.
So some of the big internet names were already mentioned. talk a little bit about travel, retail. Do you have other sort of big customers that you can mention?
Yeah, our story started in the casual gaming, so not in betting but in games, because in games you don't really need to do a transaction. If you build a photo album, of course you're going to do everything to get that album paid and to get it shipped to your house. Whereas in gaming, it's either easy and you do it or you don't. So we were very much focused on the experience, the years of integration and making sure that worked. And that gave an enormous uplift for the gaming merchant. And from there on it expanded into every industry, from travel like Ryanair, EasyJet, to Vodafone in telcos, to Facebook, Spotify, Uber. Every industry we now have merchants, so that has, but it started all in casual gaming.
So let's talk a little bit about the competitive landscape. I guess we've already covered some of WorldPay. For people in the audience who are aware of Stripe and Square and iZettle, how do you differentiate what Adyen is doing relative to some of those names?
It's a very big market, and if you see the needs of the companies which are today international or which are tomorrow offering a service in multiple countries, it's only a very, very small group that can service them. If you add to that take, for example, you have a fashion brand, then you need to have in-store, you need to have mobile, and you need to have browser-based payments. We're the only company who can actually do that on a global scale. So in there we're light years ahead. If you're a smaller merchant, there's more choice. And what you then typically see is that there's a long tail and there's the high end, and we are specifically very good at the high end. Although there are also some smaller merchants choosing for us because they say if it's good for all those large brands, and if I can get it today, then I know I'm good tomorrow.
And I take it, how many offices are you in these days?
12 offices.
How many employees?
We have 350 employees. We don't need to have an office in a country to be active there, but it can help in terms of account management and customer support to be at least present in a region, so it's easy to talk.
So where are your big offices?
San Francisco, Sao Paulo, Singapore, Amsterdam. Those are the big offices.
And a lot of your technical development is in Amsterdam?
Yes, that works very well for us. We have most of our development, not all, but most of it in Amsterdam. Amsterdam has been very good because the region has highly skilled developers, and the loyalty is to a company that treats them well is very high. And in Silicon Valley, there's such a competition for talent and less loyalty. So in a complex product, you need a developer a bit longer. If someone stays on for 18 months and 12 months of that is training, it's very inefficient.
So in talking to you ahead of time, we talked a lot about how scale really matters in this business. How do you see yourself scaling up against the truly big companies of the payments and transaction industry, the first datas, the card issuers, you're in a valley of giants despite the fact that you're profitable and you've got revenue.
Yeah, we always felt that the need to do this really quickly, that is a wrong thought line. It's the thought line of, okay, so you have access to a lot of capital, hire a lot of people. If you cannot do it yourself, hire someone who will hire a lot of people. Spend. We did the opposite. We felt we could not grow more than doubling each year. So we went from 5 employees to 10, from 10 to 20, from 20 to 40. So it's a bit of a longer journey. It took us 8 years to get where we're now. At this moment, we process about 45 billion euros per year. So that's a journey to get there. And in the beginning, we had shareholders saying to us, look, with your access to capital, things are going so well, speed this up. If you now speak to the same investor in the last shareholders meeting, he said, look, I eat my words. I think you have the perfect path. And the perfect path is if you want to have knowledgeable people who can really help the merchant, you cannot just recruit 50, 60 people at a time and think that that will lead to great results. We invest a huge amount in employees. We have programs to have them travel from office to office, so that the Singapore office is similar to the San Francisco office to the Amsterdam office. So it's also great because there are of course many young people working for us, and before you know it, you spent a couple of months in a total different region. So we do huge investment in employees to get a company with one culture, but a huge investment and hiring a lot at the same time. There are limitations there, I feel. So we scale up very quickly because we double each year, also in revenues, also in processed volume. But it's not going to be suddenly a big bang. I think that is high risk also for our merchants. Then you have a high risk that the service levels will deteriorate.
Here's a kind of simple question, but where do you attract people from? Are they refugees from the financial crisis, coming from the, deep in the financial sector? Or are they technologists? Are they entrepreneurial startup types? Who are your employees?
Well, Jack Dorsey always said, I don't want to have any payment experts working for my company because they only can tell me what you cannot do. And there's some truth in that. We have very few people from the banking industry or from the card schemes. Of course, you need some knowledge, so we have some. But often people who work for enterprise software, developers that worked on systems that need permanent uptime, but can come from very different areas. We attract them. We also attract a lot of people from other countries. And what is new is that you now also see that we have people from Silicon Valley moving to Amsterdam to work as a developer for Adyen, which I thought is quite the opposite of what you would expect. So we attract domestic, but many of them international. Amsterdam is quite an international city.
I'm from Silicon Valley. I can attest to the fact that Amsterdam's quality of life has some definite advantages. Let's see. A few months ago, let's go back to the fundraising question. A few months ago, you said that you'd raised plenty of money and that you had plenty on your plate. You weren't thinking about a public offering anytime soon, felt under no pressure. And then you raised the money recently from Iconic. Has anything changed with all of the activity going on as WorldPay goes public, as Square files its IPO prospectus? Does that accelerate your thinking?
For Adyen, it's about speed of rollout. And it's not only money and the people that work for us, but network is important in that as well. And if you look at how we were funded, we had GA, which is of course New York. We have Temasek, which is Singapore. We have Index, London. And then a true Silicon Valley investor does help. So if you get into agreement about the size of the round, if you get into agreement about the funding, we of course, I already know the people from Iconic about 2 years. And so if it comes together, it's not so much about, yes, you have to give them a meaningful stake, but it's not about we need to raise capital. It's about how do we speed it up so that for all the shareholders and for for everybody involved in Adyen, this is a good move towards a bigger company. And then whether we will go IPO or strategic sale or something, it's totally not on the agenda. On the agenda is let's roll out what we have. There's no pressure. All the shareholders we have are very long-term investors, so we are likely to remain private for a very long term.
I mean, one of the things you've been pushing forward with in terms of new products is really your omni-channel strategy. How do you think retail is going to look five years from now, and what role do you want to play in that?
In omni-channel is where we are really still moving the needle. Whereas in online payments, it's about quality of service, it's about conversion. With omni-channel, it's a part which is still fairly clunky. If you buy something online, you want to be able to return into store, and then you expect that the person there can reverse your transaction. If you are in store and you want to buy something which is out of stock, you expect that you can pay with the terminal and it will be shipped to your home. All that is not there yet because often the store has had a separate agreement and a separate payment system, and then you have your online payment system, and then someone is manually trying to make that work. That's hard work, and what we think is it should be one system so that you can see that merged over all channels and that you can deliver over all channels. Also, the way how terminals have been provided, where they're provided by a bank and hard-coded to your bank, makes it particularly difficult to integrate that with the online part. So there's room there for a full new supplier. So we invest in that heavily. It's also the fun part, right? Because that's the part where you really do new things and where there's a lot of surprise by merge. You see like, wow, is this already possible?
Who do you see as competitors in this maybe amorphous but emerging omni-channel market?
It's very fragmented. You see many competitors on a single market, in a single region. To do this globally, we are light years ahead.
Let's go back to what happens to the payment channels for banks. Is there a time when the payments channel, I mean, when I think of the financial, well, the payments industry, I think of all the layers that are involved in the process now. Is it your view that those layers are collapsing, and what's your role in just the structure of the industry between the merchant acquirers, the point of sale, and all the way through the back end?
I think the typical layering, as you see it now, which is that there's a payments company that signs up the merchant, and that the merchant then and that payment company has a deal with a bank, and then over the bank network it flows to the card schemes. That is obsolete for the high end. That could work for smaller companies. For larger companies, you need to do what we do, own the whole line. The role which banks are going to play depends on if they are able to attract talented developers, and if they are able to create enough freedom that those developers can actually launch the beautiful stuff they're building. And at this moment, that turns out to be challenging.
Thanks. I think at this point we're going to end it. Thank you for taking the time. I hope people know more about Adyen than they did before the presentation. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you.